Robert Mueller has a brewing problem on his hands. His Russia collusion investigation is facing a credibility crisis. And a top FBI official just blew the whistle on the one thing that could bring him down for good. Much has been made of Mueller's relationship with former FBI Director James Comey. The two have a relationship going back to the Bush administration during a controversy over a domestic spying program. Mueller and Comey have even been described as brothers in arms. And now he is retraining his sights on impeaching Trump over obstruction of justice for firing Comey since his Russia collusion investigation has proven to be a bust. But how can he fairly investigate this matter when he is so closely tied to Comey? Critics agree that this taints Mueller's investigation. Former FBI Assistant Director James Kallstrom said Mueller should have recused himself. Breitbart reports, the former Assistant Director of the FBI wonders who investigates the investigators in the wake of former Trump administration National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleading guilty to lying to the FBI and agreeing to cooperate with Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe. Bob Mueller should have never been offered nor accepted the job as special counsel as he has a huge conflict of interest, Jim Kallstrom tells Breitbart News. He should have recused himself. Not only do observers describe Mueller and the man he recommended to replace him as FBI Director, James Comey, as close or even best friends, but the special counsel pursues an investigation heavily involving the bureau he once led. How one maintains detachment in leading a team that includes numerous anti-Trump partisans in a probe involving one's close friend and the former bureau for which Mueller served as director goes unexplained. Kallstrom also ripped the investigation for possibly employing the fake news Fusion GPS dossier to obtain warrants to spy on Trump officials. Breitbart also reports, other problems Kallstrom sees include the means by which investigators obtained information and what constituted probable cause to obtain it. The Obama administration apparently had the advantage of using electronic surveillance, collecting information on the Trump campaign, Kallstrom explains. That collection, in my view, may be found to be unlawful. At the very least, one administration conducting surveillance on the opposition party looking to replace it strikes as unusual if not unprecedented. In 1972, for instance, President Richard Nixon's political team relied on former agents of the FBI and CIA to gather intelligence on the Democratic Party. If the surveillance and investigatory methods prove unlawful, Kallstrom notes that this puts Mueller in an awkward position of looking into his close friend and perhaps the bureau that both men once led if they used the phony dossier as the predicate for the FISA order they obtained. That could be a huge problem, Kallstrom tells Breitbart News. If they knew the information was phony, that is a felony. If they did not know it was phony, they were incompetent. It's clear that Mueller's investigation is a sham. The collusion hoax has completely collapsed and Mueller has been exposed as a naked anti-Trump partisan whose job is to produce grounds for impeaching Trump by hook or by crook. And Kallstrom raises two other devastating critiques of Mueller. First, he has a clear conflict of interest. Second, he used evidence that could have been obtained under false pretenses. This will only increase the calls for Mueller's political fishing expedition to be shut down immediately.
I said that the bill would be on my desk before Christmas, and you are holding me literally to that, so we did a rush job today. It's not fancy, but it's the Oval Office. It's the great Oval Office. Mitch McConnell has been fantastic. Worked so hard. We would speak at 3 in the morning and 2 in the morning, and we would speak whenever we had to speak, but he worked so hard, and the exact same thing can be said for Paul Ryan.
A good Christmas bourbon to recommend from Kentucky?
It's all really good. It makes the holidays so much better.
Senator McConnell's ready for some of that bourbon, I think, heading out of town after a busy few days, and the president touting a busy year of accomplishments legislatively, regulations, and in the economy. If you take a look at, and we often put up these charts from January until now, where things stand, real GDP growth, 3.2%, unemployment rate down at 4.1, consumer confidence, 129.5, existing home sales, 5.81 units, and then often cited by this administration, the Dow, Dow, the milestones in the Dow from the time of the election all the way until now, above and at 25,000, which has been quite a ride over the past year. So let's bring in our panel. Jason Riley, Wall Street Journal columnist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Susan Page, Washington bureau chief at USA Today. And Lisa Booth, columnist with the Washington Examiner. You know, Jason, a lot of talk about the sales job that'll have to be done on the tax cut, but it does seem like both the Republican leaders on Capitol Hill and the president are heading to vacation pretty happy looking at all the numbers they look at.
Certainly. There is no doubt about it. The president is on a roll right now, Brett, and he's done it against all expectations. He's ending the year on a roll. He's done it with these bad approval ratings. He's done it with a hostile press. He's done it with these investigations hanging over his head. But many thought that the health care reform failure would be the knockout blow. He picked himself back up, plowed through on tax reform, and here we are in late December. He's passed the biggest tax reform bill in 30 years. And he's also, we should add, struck a major blow to Obamacare in forms of, in the sense that he's gone after that individual mandate. So there's no doubt that he has a lot of momentum going into next year, and it's against all expectations.
Yeah, Susan, I mentioned the sales job that may be coming as they head into the midterm election year. Here's the president on that today.
To do much selling. I think the corporations that are giving billions and billions of dollars away to their workers, and many more are coming, I think that's really what's selling this, maybe better than anybody could, including myself. But I think come February, when they open their checks and they see, wow, what happened? I have a lot more money in here. I think that's really going to be something very special.
Susan, obviously we have much more ahead in January legislatively.
Well, that's certainly true. There are some issues that got kicked down the road to January. Big spending decisions, what to do about the Dreamers, longer-term extension of the children's health care program. But I think the president makes a good point that one other task they have is convincing Americans that this tax bill will work for them. This is the least popular major legislation that's been enacted in 30 years. And I think it will get sold not on the basis it's a mad campaign, but if Americans see money in their paycheck, noticeable enough for them to think was significant. And also if they see jobs created, wages going up, which is the argument that Republicans made in passing this bill.
Lisa.
Well, I think part of the reason why the legislation is unpopular is the way that it's been covered by the media. If you watched many television networks or read a lot of the major papers, you would be shocked to find out that middle-class voters are the ones that are going to be recipients of the tax cuts as well. In fact, 80% of Americans are going to see a tax cut, but that's not the way that it's been covered. And President Trump deserves great credit for this legislative victory for Republicans. As Jason said, this is something they've been trying to do for 30 years, not to mention also ANWR drilling, which they've been trying to do, proponents have been trying to do for 40 years, repealing the individual mandate they've been trying to do over the past 8 years. So just this week, you have 3 major accomplishments from President Trump and Republicans, not to mention a list of promises that he has kept that he made along the campaign trail.
Jason, Senator McConnell talking about that Alabama race. Privately, a lot of leaders suggesting there's some problems ahead for Republicans in 2018. But here's McConnell looking back on that political effort.
Difference for the country and beginning to move it right of center. There's not much you can do on a partisan basis in the Senate at 52-48 or at 51-49. Which will be the number for us next year. The political genius on display, throwing away a seat in the reddest state in America, is hard to ignore.
Tongue fully in cheek there, Jason.
Exactly. But let's keep in mind, I think that these legislative victories are going to give Republicans something to run on next year, and that was very important. They needed some accomplishments. They made promises to the American people, and they needed to show that they could govern competently. And here, Trump has strung up some victories. And the country, you showed the metrics there at the top of this segment. You know, the stock market, unemployment is down, labor participation rates are up, even for vulnerable groups like like black and Hispanics, or lower rates of unemployment for those groups. So he's got something to run on. Republicans have something to run on next year, and I think that's very important. And he's got to keep that going if they want to have a successful midterm election.